The European Parliament is the voice of the people at the heart of the European Union. 626 MEPs represent 375 million Europeans in a parliament that helps to make laws for all citizens of the EU. In this programme, we'll be looking at what the European Parliament is. We'll be meeting the people who represent us there, and we'll be finding out exactly what relevance it has to our everyday lives. This is the European Parliament office in Ireland. It's in Mulzer Street in Dublin. Now, the Parliament is very important. It's very big, and it's got loads of power. So it shouldn't be that difficult to find out what it does for us, should it? The institutions of the European Union can seem pretty remote, and lots of people will say to you that they don't have any relevance to our everyday lives. But to be honest, you don't get much closer to people's everyday lives than this. The fridge. Let's have a look. Tartar sauce, eggs, jam, mustard, mayonnaise. Look at the labelling on any processed food you buy, and you'll find that it gives you a list of the ingredients in descending order of weight, best before date, and any special instructions for storage or use. If there are any additives like preservatives, colourants or sweeteners, they'll be listed and their E-number given. If the food's been sterilised using radiation, that'll be stated too. No matter where you go in the EU, you'll find this information on the food you buy, and it enables you as a consumer to know what you and your family are eating. So why do all the food companies do this? Well, because of this directive of the European Parliament and Council. Now, it mightn't look the most gripping of reading, but it affects nearly every item of food in your supermarket trolley. And because Ireland is such a major food producer, it makes life easier for our food processors. Ireland exports more than half of its food output, most of this to other member states of the EU. Because the labelling requirements are the same in all EU countries, our manufacturers don't have to worry that their goods will fall foul of different national rules in other EU countries. This directive was passed by the EU institutions, where Irish MEPs and ministers had a hand in writing and enacting it. Now, it's only one of hundreds of EU laws that affect our daily lives. So let's see how the process works. First of all, the European Union can only make decisions when it's authorised by a European treaty to do so. These treaties were negotiated by the governments of the EU when they found they could tackle certain shared problems better if they worked together to solve them. This idea of working together lies at the very heart of the European Union. So how does the EU make laws? There are three steps. First, the European Commission, which represents the interests of the Union as a whole, puts forward draft legislation designed to deal with the problem. Secondly, the Council of Ministers, representing the 15 governments, and the Parliament, representing the citizens who elected them, examine the Commission proposals, amend them if they see fit, and then enact the draft laws. Finally, the Commission sees to it that every member state implements these laws. In summary, Parliament's got 5 tasks. It enacts EU laws, jointly with the Council. It establishes the EU budget, jointly with the Council. It supervises the Commission as it implements the laws and spends the budget. It receives petitions from citizens. It publicly debates and adopts positions on new issues of concern to citizens. In a word, it speaks for and takes positions for the citizens on all EU matters which directly or indirectly affect their lives. The current President of the Parliament is Munster MEP Pat Cox.
The European Parliament has currently 626 members from the 15 states of the Union. It is a directly elected Parliament. It holds its elections each 5 years. As a Parliament, it performs the classic functions of a Parliament. It makes law, it makes budgets, it holds the institutions of the European Union to public account on the public record. When people at home might ask, how do I connect? If I have a problem, what do I do? We are, because it is our Irish political culture, open as politicians. We're not distant from the public. We're one telephone call away, we're one email away, or one visit away. So Europe and how to touch it is not far away.
Ireland is represented in Parliament by 15 MEPs drawn from 4 constituencies: Connacht Ulster, Munster, Leinster and Dublin.
Well, I suppose in a lot of ways it's a unique creature because it's the only transnationally elected parliament in the whole world. And as the only directly elected body of the European Union institutions, it represents the voices of all of the people of Europe and acts not only as their advocate, but also as their check on the powers and responsibilities of the other institutions.
The Commission's appointed, the Council of Ministers, and then you have the courts, which are appointed as well. So the only body that's democratically elected is the European Parliament. And I suppose in one way the European Parliament is the best sort of go-between between citizens and the other EU institutions.
Parliament is getting more and more power all of the time. In fact, we have co-decision in relation to most matters, and in particular in relation to budgetary matters, which is very important to the individual member states.
If co-decision, that is joint decision-making powers, is the basis of which decisions are reached between the Council of Ministers and the Parliament, then there's an obligation on the Council of Ministers to accommodate the views of the Parliament.
There are 626 members of Parliament. Now, if they were all to sit down and discuss every section of every law, they'd be there forever. So the Parliament divides itself into committees that specialise in particular areas. Each MEP belongs to 1 or 2 committees. They bring their own special knowledge to this work, and committee members between them have considerable expertise. Each committee has 30 to 40 members that go through proposed legislation in detail. The committees allow individual MEPs to have an important influence on the final shape of EU legislation. And even though there are only 15 Irish MEPs, they do a lot of networking with members from other countries to build support for solutions to problems facing Irish citizens. There's a lot of deal-making and support building that goes on in committees.
Every problem that is presented within the European Parliament is the same in every member state. And likewise, if a solution can be found in a local area of a member state, that can be replicated right across Europe. And this is why one of the strengths of Europe is that it is a bottom-up approach in so many ways that local solutions are adapted to a continent-wide problem and revolved and resolved around that. So I think that in that way you're more exposed to bigger and greater ideas than you may be at a national level.
Although most MEPs are elected under the banner of one political party or other at home, when they come to the Parliament, they usually join one of its political groups.
It's as if it was a big pie, a big round pie, and the large wedges opposite each other, left and right, are the socialists and the Christian Democrats, and they have the majority of the members of Parliament from all over Europe. And then in the centre, there are the Greens at centre-left and the Liberals at centre-right.
I think we're small in number, but we get to punch above our weight. And the Irish are natural networkers. Before the phrase networking was invented, we were probably doing it anyway.
You've got to meet people, you've got to tell them where you're coming from, tell them what you need support on, explain it to them, and try to garner their support. Everything that goes through this Parliament will impact on the daily life of European citizens.
So that's what the Parliament looks like. And like most other parliaments, it's not always the most exciting looking of places in the world. But it's where the daily work of democracy gets done. What is exciting is the results of the work done by the Parliament with other EU bodies. And you can see these results all around you every day. You don't have to look too far to see the results of the European Parliament's efforts, in cooperation with the Commission and the Council on Ireland's behalf. Most of our recent major infrastructure projects have been funded or part-funded by the EU. The spending of EU structural funds is overseen and approved by the Parliament, with a lot of input from its Regional Policy, Transport and Tourism Committee. One of the most impressive EU-funded projects is this one in Cork, a 600-metre-long tunnel under the River Lee, downstream of Cork City. It took 4 years to complete, and since opening in May 1999, it's become an important part of the infrastructure of the whole region, allowing more than 30,000 vehicles a day to bypass Cork City. The whole project cost more than €120 million and was mainly paid for out of EU structural funds. The structural funds form an important part of the EU's annual budget. They aim to bring economically underdeveloped areas up to the standard of the rest of the EU.
Most of the infrastructure development in Ireland has been as a result of financial support from Europe. And it's not that we were always out with a begging bowl. We were entitled to this by treaty. We were brought up to the level of the rest of the European Union over a period of time. And now we have what we call the misnomer of the Celtic Tiger. The Celtic Tiger may be something created by the support we receive from the European Union, but at the same time has left an awful lot of people behind. And we have to try and address those issues.
My main committee is regional policy, transport, tourism. I brought members of that committee over to Ireland so that they could drive from Dublin over to the west and down through the west and experience the infrastructure there. It's very important to engage people in your constituency and that they know the needs of your people.
Deciding on which projects will get regional development funding is just one of the ways the MEPs promote their constituents' interests and defend their rights. And there are lots of other ways.
My own particular, shall we say, and rather unique role is I mediate when children have been transnationally abducted by one or other of their parents. I'm known as the Parliament mediator, and I deal with all those cases when they come in.
I, one might say, majored in fisheries because of the region that I represent, Connacht Ulster, and of the importance of fisheries to the island of Ireland. There were various issues, whether it's fishermen's retirement packages, whether it be the review of the common fisheries policy. We spent a lot of time on that particular one.
We're again faced with a Commission decision to try and liberalise the postal services, which in my view would be to the detriment of the rural postal service system as we know it in Ireland.
I've done a report myself on the postal services because the Commission wants to liberalise postal services. I did a report which was quite influential in achieving a compromise in Parliament which defended the universal service right across Europe, and the Commission has had to come forward with a new proposal which may go through in the next few months.
I spend a lot of my time actually dealing with complaints from citizens in Ireland who are very unhappy with the government's non-compliance with EU directives on the environment, and we will be in touch with the Commission and hassling the Commission to take action against Ireland and to try and force Ireland into complying with the legislation.
Another programme quite recently, I brought it through the Parliament, brought it through unanimously in actual fact, called the CAFE programme. That's Clean Air for Europe. Everybody wants clean air, everyone wants clean water, and everybody wants better food. And that is why we have at the moment initiated a European food authority.
Well, my particular interest and my particular committee is agriculture. It's my main committee. We have a commitment to the protection and the preservation of family farming, and the European Commission endorses that particular point of view in relation to Commission policy.
Well, I'm on budget control. That's probably the one I do most work on now, and that is the one where we are responsible really to the Parliament of the way the European Commission spends the money that the European taxpayers give to them.
I'm the Parliament expert on Taiwan, Hong Kong, China, and I do an annual report on that. Another aspect of my work which I've enjoyed is leading EU election observation missions. The EU, whichever country it goes to, we've been to Zimbabwe, we've been to Cambodia, we've been to Nicaragua. We go there at the invitation of the authorities, and especially the election authorities. And our purpose is to ensure that the election is free and fair and democratically legitimate.
I'm a member of the Human Genetics Committee, which has sat for over 12 months, dealing with all the ethical questions that the major scientific advances in the biotechnology area have brought to us. The whole cloning and the whole research in that area and the implications for human dignity, if you like, and organisation of the human race in the decades and generations to come.
So, through its specialised committees, Parliament can grapple with the most complex of problems. Because of its broad base in 15 countries, it can garner the input and experience of MEPs from all parts of the Union and feed the best solutions into legislation. Parliament's debates and votes in plenary sessions are based on reports from its committees, so its declarations and resolutions are doubly effective because they're so well informed and so broadly based. In recent years, we've all become more environmentally aware, and it's an area of law that Parliament is hugely involved in. Are you deliberately put here, next door to the landfill site?
We are in a way because all the material would have been gone into the landfill. So we're positioned here, adjacent to the landfill, to divert material from the landfill.
Plastic carrier bags, 15 cents each.
That's right. Since March, the EU and the government have imposed this 15 cents a bag levy. And the purpose of it is to reduce the volume of bags, plastic bags. And that 15 cents goes into an environment fund. And that fund is going to help recycling projects. So indirectly, that money will help the facilities like this and promote more recycling. To be up with EU legislation, it is a positive thing. And we must go that way. We must go forward and not backwards.
In areas like the environment and so on, I mean, you can't stop pollution from crossing a border. So you have to cooperate and coordinate, and you have to take the bigger global picture of it.
When we pass a law, it will be relevant from the west coast of Ireland to the eastern boundary of the Baltic states, and therefore touching Russia, Ukraine and Belarus. So an extraordinarily vast panorama, and the Parliament will be vital in making sure that the weight of democracy, public accountability, openness, transparency are the byword of how Europe will do its business on a continental scale.